Good morning, friends. Thanks for joining here at Journey Home Meditation for the morning sit. I'm Michael. I'm happy to be here today. And I think that's all I have to say about that. If you're seeing this on the video in the background, you might catch glimpses not of what we saw yesterday in the Zoom, rather the Pacific Ocean right behind me here at Seaside in Northwest Oregon. So happy to be able to be in this space this week and so very grateful for that. Here this week for a conference called Peerpocalypse. And I talked about it a little bit yesterday, and I'll talk about it just a little bit more today. It's a few hundred peers. I think there's something between 500 and 700 people present who are all in some way adjacent to peer support, which again, you can look that up, peer support specialist. And so that means there's a whole lot of people coming together who have some sort of shared lived experience that we are open and explicit about. And the way that feels different for me walking into the room, it actually, strangely enough, has me a little bit on guard. I noticed that my defense mechanisms were kind of kicking in, those ones that are sort of automatic, those defense mechanisms that you don't quite recognize that you have some days. But as I was sitting last night, kind of going over what my experience of the day was and what I was feeling in my body, and even this morning as I'm sitting here talking with you, I can feel that there's a protection on my vulnerability. Maybe part of it does have to do with what happened in the sit yesterday morning through the Zoom. We're not coming through Zoom today, just a heads up. I decided to get back to that when I have a secure internet connection back home. We're just coming in today through Restream, which takes us through YouTube and various Facebook spaces. But yeah, yesterday was upsetting. I don't think I gave it enough time to process yesterday morning. I was pretty busy and packed through things. But even so, just recognizing that my vulnerability is a bit guarded the last couple of days, it gave me some space last night to be able to do the work of understanding why it is I'm protecting myself. Like what is it about these spaces that I feel defensive in? And I wouldn't say it's defensive in the way, it's almost like a poor use of language. Like we have a poverty of language, because it's not defensive as in you are in an argument when somebody says something and you defend yourself. It's not that type of defensive. It's more guarded and observant, but in a way that's bordering on, again, for the poverty of words, paranoia. There's this feeling of like, I don't know what, I don't know how to relax into the spaces. There's a lot of people, a lot of sound. But that's generally not, in my experience of myself, the worst thing. So So it took me some time last night as I was sitting and working through what is it that's giving me this low level consistent anxiety. And this is where I'm going to get to a place that I think many people might be able to connect. Walking into a room full of people, even ones that you feel intellectually safe with, right? Like in your head, you know, oh, this is a safe space. There is something that starts to come up about if I start opening my heart to all of these people, what would happen? In what ways would I be rejected? In what ways would I reject people? Uh, and in what ways would I fall deeply in love with everyone in the room? And there is, I think, when we have a room full of people with shared experience, there is a little bit of suspicions that we have if we haven't done the work to completely accept and love who we are. And I want to go a little bit deeper into that. Um, if I'm sitting in a room full of people that I know don't share my lived experience, then I have this thing that I can I'm holding the cards. You can't see the cards, and I can keep some close to the chest. I don't have to tell you everything about my experience or who I am. I can choose little bits here and there. But when you're in a room full of people that you can just see, there's a way to see that we can't hold our cards to our chest because we are aware of where we've been. We are aware of what we've seen, what we've felt, what we've done. And that creates an inherent vulnerability that is out of my locus of control almost, right? Like if I can choose how vulnerable I want to be, I can convince myself that I'm open, that I'm vulnerable. And I don't have to touch into those dark places in myself that I keep in the shadows that I haven't learned to love yet. But when I'm in a space where that vulnerability is inherent, it's kind of part of the deal. And I'm around people who um, have a lot of the same traits and experiences that I have, I might be more likely to want to close off some of that involuntary vulnerability. That's where the anxiety comes in. The anxiety comes in this battle that I'm having with myself where I am afraid that I'm being seen in ways that I maybe don't prefer to be seen. There's a lot of work to do on these things. There's a lot of really good stuff to get into, and I'm realizing it has become, as I'm getting into these feelings of anxiety at this conference, I am starting to recognize that these anxieties are actually like just opportunities to fall deeper in love with myself, to relax into it, and to be gentle and kind with myself and gentle and kind with those in the room. And in some ways, that's a challenge. And in some ways, that's the most inviting thing I can imagine. uh, and that brings us to the second agreement this week. Because we're here for 4 days, I thought I would do one of the four agreements each day. Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements. And yesterday, we did the first agreement, which is to be impeccable with your word. And we talked about that a little bit before we were interrupted yesterday. Um, but the basic idea is there to remember that what you speak becomes a belief, and what you believe becomes your experience of the world. Um, so just remember, you know, um, you want to speak your heart, you want to speak truth, but you want to do it in a way that invites you and every other heart to the table, not in a way that excludes parts of yourself. And that's what being impeccable with your word means, is don't say things that you don't want to take on as a truth. And this doesn't mean that you don't talk about the bad things. This isn't about spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. This is saying, hey, remember that whatever it is you're saying about somebody else is what you're saying about yourself. And whatever it is you say about yourself is what you're going to believe. So be careful even joking about the ways in which we denigrate ourselves. Um, I think that's a really good agreement. Ruiz talks about agreements are the things that we take on as a belief. We agree to these premises with the world. So having these agreements here that we set out, these 4 agreements, can be a really strong and inviting way into the relationship. The second agreement is probably one of the ones that I think is most difficult. Don't take anything personally. Don't take anything personally. Ruiz talks about this, and I think we could just say, oh, well, that's pretty self-explanatory, but really there's a lot to get into there with what it means to take things personally. And I know for myself, I don't know if it's the PTSD. I don't know if it's the low self-esteem. I don't know if it's like a lifetime of faking confidence for a survival method. I don't know which part of it is, but in some ways I tend to take a lot of things very personally. Not, and I want to clarify that. I take ownership of things that I don't need to take ownership of. I take responsibility for things that I don't need to be responsible for. Um, and I think some of us do that because maybe from a young age we were emotionally responsible for people in our lives who maybe weren't emotionally accountable or didn't know at that time in their lives um, that they were dealing with a lot of emotional issues, and that gets transferred over, especially to kids. It happens a lot to kids who are given a lot of responsibility from a young age. And that's not a bad thing. It's not inherently bad, but what does happen is we start to confuse my responsibilities in the world with my emotional responsibilities. And I think some people will take those things on. I know that I did. I've taken on a lot of personal feelings of guilt and shame in my life for the way other people feel. So I'm hypersensitive to those things. And that means that I take responsibility for things that aren't mine. I take on a lot of emotional guilt and shame and fear, and that's taking it personally. Um, a lot of times that comes with this savior mentality. I have to save people. I have to help everyone. I have to do these things. And I know that there's a lot of us out there that have this, especially at a conference like this. Peer support. Some ways we think maybe we're making up for our sins of our past, or some ways we understand what it is to be isolated and alone and terrified and to feel unloved. And so we want to make sure that nobody feels that if we can help it, right? We're doing everything we can to that. But a lot of times we have still unhealthy ways that we connect to each other because we're still working from some of those shadow places of feelings of lack, feelings of low worth, feelings of isolation, feelings of abandonment. And so we try to cover those spaces up by doing more, being more, right? But in doing all of that, we're actually um, connecting less with ourselves. And it's a good agreement. Don't take anything personally. Um, and the deeper look at that too is don't take things to be about your personality. Remember that when we get in there deep, we're souls. We're souls that are here inside of this body and inside of this mind. But deeper than the mind and deeper than the body is who I truly am. And this personality that I've developed is a response. This personality that I've developed is the ways that I respond to the world to get the things that I need to survive. It's not a manipulation necessarily, but it's just uh, if you were to take a paintbrush and paint and a canvas, the thing that you are creating is the response to the actions that are happening. That canvas is taking on all of these colors, these pigments, these movements, these emotions. And the thing that you see, that's the personality of the painting, not the painter. Right? These are momentary expressions by the world. We are momentary expressions of existence. We're not here very long. And we're these brief, Orion Foxwood calls us gestures of spirit. And I think it's just a beautiful way to say it. We are brief gestures of spirit. And so when we take things personally, the effect of that is oftentimes that we close ourselves off to protect ourselves. We hide behind things that we can hide behind. And that's fine. That's a good survival mechanism. But when you're ready to come out of hiding and you're ready to do that deeper opening, the world is here waiting for you. It's waiting for me. And I love remembering that. I love being reminded of that when I have panic attacks and anxiety, and when I start to feel curmudgeonly. I love remembering that the world's here. It's just waiting for you, bud. Whenever you're ready, come out from behind that personality you're hiding behind in that moment. So that's the second agreement from Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements. If you haven't read them, give them a shot. I'm going to bring them up on the screen here if you happen to be watching the video. And I'm going to go ahead and leave these four agreements up while we just take some breaths together and try to settle into allowing ourselves to come out of hiding, in a sense. I think that if I can remember that I'm here to play, and then I see these moments as being this game of hide and seek. I'm being called. We are being catcalled. Hold on, I'm gonna say hi. I love you guys. Are we on the screen? Yeah, we're on the meditation. I'll see you all in a minute. Okay, I'm being catcalled from out the window by a bunch of people who do love me, and I love them, and that feels good. It was actually really briefly before we get into the breathing practice together. I want to share a practice that I started working with when I start feeling panic and alone and anxiety. I started working through just speaking aloud a list of the people that I know without a doubt love me, and the people that I know that I love, that I am good at loving, that who know that I love them. And I start working, through the obvious ones, right? The ones that are the easiest to go, but then I keep going, and I find reasons that people who I'm not sure if they would say they love me, but then I find reasons that they do. And I find it easy to love people. I love people. I love the people in my life. I love a lot of people in my life. But not all personalities do I get along with. And so I was finding the ways in which I love all of these different people and the ways in which all of these different people love me. And I just start making myself say them out loud. I was lying in bed last night doing this practice, and I was able to fall asleep gently and easily. And I slept really well. And I felt safe. And that's what it was, is I felt connected and safe. So that's a good practice to try. Just start naming aloud the people and the ways in which you are loved, and the ways in which you love people. I think you'll find that it's a really good antidote for the ways in which we can easily name in our minds the ways in which people don't like us, the ways in which people reject us, the ways in which people fear us. And then I remember, nobody is rejecting you. They're rejecting the part of them that you look like. Don't take anything personally. They're rejecting the part of them that looks like you. And we do that when we reject others. We're rejecting the part of them that looks a lot like us. So name the ways in which you are loved and you are loving. It's the same practice. It just works the other way. It feeds us instead of starves us. And when we're being fed, we don't have a fear of scarcity. We have a knowledge of abundance. And we feel safe. So that's something we can maybe think about in this practice this morning. So if you're seated as I am, you can place your feet flat to the ground or have your legs crossed in any number of ways. Close your eyes if you are comfortable with that and if that's something you can safely do. Or just keep a soft gaze a few feet in front of the body. Breathing in through the nose to the bottom of the belly. And release. For these first few breaths, just breathe the way you're breathing and see how it feels. But as we get into the practice, try to focus your breathing point to move down into the body so that the diaphragm moves into the belly, making the belly expand. We spend a lot of time breathing into our chest, rising up. But that's not necessary if we're not running from something. The way to relax the body, to communicate calm and health with the body, is to breathe gently into the belly through the nose. Relax the shoulders, straighten the spine, bring the shoulder blades together just ever so slightly in the back. Breathing out, be gentle with your out breath, but breathe all the way out. Release everything. It can be helpful to, after breathing in, to hold the breath for just a moment, to feel that stillness in the body as the breath is moving in, making its way around our being. And the same for following the out breath. After you breathe out entirely and let it go, feel that absence, that openness that you've just created in the body. Find yourself wandering in this silent space. Lose yourself in the receiving and releasing of breath. Find your deep sensation of love as it radiates from the center of your body and extends out everywhere you can see and beyond. Thanks for joining us this morning, friends. You can hold this space as long as you like. Find all the love that's there and all the space there is to fill with even more of it. There's never a shortage. And the more love you give, the more there is in the world to receive. It's a really amazing system. It's worked out pretty well. And sometimes our wounded mind just needs a little reminder. Let the body carry it for a moment, just with the breath. I truly do love. I truly do love. So thanks for being here, being a part of that love today. You know, where there was anxiety about this morning, about going to this conference full of people, I'm now just in this last bit of this morning sit together, feeling really excited to be over there in that space today and share in that love. So I'm going to get over there and do that. You could feel free to message me, journeyhomemeditation@gmail.com. And you can find all of our morning sits on Spotify, Audible, YouTube, and looking for Journey Home Meditation on Facebook. You'll find us there as well. Hari Om.